Tom, that's got to feel so good starting your own company. I mean, obviously your name's even on it still, but some of the cultural values, and the mission that you have for the company still exist to this day. And to think back to 1980 when you started, you didn't realize the amount of pressure and responsibility and stress that come with starting your own business. When did you feel like Dudley Land Company was really becoming more than a one-man show and that it would potentially live on for decades?
Um, well, that's a good question.
I don't know if you ever really feel
Maybe
like,
never felt it.
you know, I had a great partner, Tom Havenstripe,
Hmm.
and once I was able to find somebody that shared the same beliefs that I did, I was able to turn over responsibilities to another person. We were able to split up responsibilities, and it took a big load off of me. And when did that, the company started to grow. I was just kind of held back. I just didn't have the personnel that had the same desires that I did. I had plenty of people that wanted to, well, let's call it work day to day and go home at night, but it really required more than that. And the partner I brought on had the same desires that I did. And it was at that time that the company started to expand, and I felt much more comfortable about the direction.
yeah, when that happened, Tom, I'm thinking back, when that happened and I was a young guy in the company, I remember that very clearly. And that was about the time that we really started rolling out the databases and the columns product that we use even till today. Was that something that, when you were able to delegate some responsibility, what was that? I mean, what did you take up? What was your passion at that point? What did it open you up to doing?
Yeah, I may kind of backtrack on that a little bit, but when I kind of got into automation and I saw I saw the need for database management. And I remember this to this day, that for you to send a lease out, it was a 7-step process. You had to write the name down 7 different times, the legal description 7 times. They go from drafts to leases to ownerships to a letter that went in the mail. Like there were 2 others, I can't remember what it was. And I said, this is insane to do it 7 times. So the database management was huge. And through the years, we finally refined it. And when we got into, you could put your data in one time and generate 7 at minimum 7 different reports. And with that, our administration costs just went way down, and everybody else's administration costs were still real high. It gave us a big edge in just cost of what we were charging our services by reducing administrative costs and at the same time improving performance. That was a big deal. That really allowed us to really explode. And as the oil patch was maturing and we were getting into, in the year 2000s, let's say, we were getting into the shale plays, horizontal fracking. Companies weren't just doing a little section or 2 sections. Well, they were doing a half a county. They were doing counties at a time, and they needed somebody that could pick up, accumulate all this information and present it in reportable formats. We had that capability. And with that, we got some huge, giant projects by some very big players. And that is when I knew we were really on the cuff of of really having a company that had some staying power at that time.
Yeah. And Dudley was one of the first ones. I mean, he was definitely a pioneer, and I'm not claiming this just from inside the company. I still to this day get, told when I run into, and now they're VPs of land, they're they're at the end of their careers, and they say, like, you guys were the first. Dudley was the first to really take advantage of databases and develop it. I mean, Tom created one of the first land programs for managing leasing projects. And he was right there at the beginning. And that groundwork we built on for 20 years since. And so you're right, Tom. Thinking back, that's probably the time that it really made you feel like we got something, and we could replicate it. And that was the biggest thing too. You could replicate the process because you had a constant. And it was a big deal.
Bree, let me tell you a story. And I look back at that now that I think about that. But here I am. We got this idea of this automation, but now you got to go sell it. And I mean, most companies, some didn't even have computers at that time. But I remember taking the large monitors that we used to have, the big monitors and big computers. I had one of those large compact, looked like a big suitcase, compact computer. And I literally put that on a plane, and I would go through the airport on a little dolly, and I would be in downtown Houston, Texas, going from office to office, setting up. And back then we used those little plug-in modems, dial-up modems, and I would dial into our database in Oklahoma City, and then I would access data that we had there, and I'd show them what we were doing. And I probably set up at least 120 different companies and showed them what we were doing at that time. And personally, I thought it was very impressive, and so did a lot of those people. And we landed some business from all of that. And it really opened up the doors and got us a name at the time. But I do laugh about thinking about going through the airport I'm in a monitor in a box. And I mean, I didn't think anything of it at the time.
Yeah. What may or may not be an explosive device.
Right. Yeah. Back then you weren't me. But anyway, I did that. I had never told you that, but I did that for, golly, that was back in the late 80s and early 90s.
Wow. So you were into it even then. Because I came in with the company in 2004, and that's when we rolled out kind of the leasing program where you could, generate lease documents and lease packets from all this information that we had gathered in the field. And that's kind of the next step, was to bring it full circle. So that was my first exposure to it as a field person. And I remember that time, it was a big deal. It was a lot of training that we did for field landmen to actually use the program, because it's so new. So many of them had never used a database. They were filling out reports in Excel and things like that. But it was a big effort. It was a major effort at the time to get everybody up and running, but it just allowed for repeatable results. It was a game changer for us.